The rain-slicked streets of Portland gleamed under the streetlights as Ezra Coleman sped through the night, his heart pounding like a war drum. He gripped the steering wheel, knuckles pale, replaying the moment he'd seen his best friend, Julian Navarro, propose to his boyfriend, Mateo Reyes, in front of a cheering crowd. That should have been his moment, his life, his love, his triumph. Ezra and Julian had been inseparable since their freshman year at Reed College, two misfits navigating a world that didn't always understand them. Ezra, a black aspiring playwright with a sharp wit and a guarded heart, had always felt like the shadow to Julian's light. Julian, with his effortless charm, tousled dark hair, and infectious laugh, could make anyone feel like they belonged. They'd spent countless nights dreaming up futures together. Ezra's plays on Broadway, Julian's art in galleries. But somewhere along the way, Julian's life had bloomed into everything Ezra had secretly wanted for himself. Love, stability, a home. Now, at 28, Ezra was still chasing fleeting hookups and unfinished scripts, while Julian was engaged to Mateo, a 29-year-old community organizer with a smile that could melt glaciers. The engagement party Ezra had thrown for them last night, at a cozy rooftop venue overlooking the Willamette River, had been his grand gesture, his way of proving he was still part of Julian's world. He'd spent weeks planning it, from the string lights to the curated playlist of indie folk songs they'd loved in college. Everyone had called it perfect. Julian had hugged him, tears in his eyes, whispering, "You're the best, EZ." But as the night wore on, Ezra's smile had cracked. Watching Julian and Mateo dance, their hands intertwined, Ezra felt a hollow ache. That could have been him. He pulled into the parking lot of his cramped apartment in southeast Portland, the engine's hum fading into the drizzle. His phone buzzed, Julian's name on the screen. "You okay, man? You left early." Ezra didn't reply. He couldn't. The truth was clawing at his throat. He wasn't okay. He hadn't been for years. And it wasn't just jealousy. It was the gnawing suspicion that Julian had somehow taken the life Ezra was meant to live. The next morning, Ezra sat at his cluttered desk, a half-empty coffee mug beside his laptop. He stared at the script he'd been working on for months, a semi-autobiographical play about two friends torn apart by unspoken love. The cursor blinked, mocking him. He couldn't write, not when his mind kept replaying last night's party. Julian's hand on Mateo's waist, the way their laughter seemed to shut out the world. Ezra had always known Julian was gay. Hell, they'd come out to each other in a drunken heart-to-heart at 19. But Ezra had never admitted the deeper truth. He'd been in love with Julian for years, and now Julian was building a life with someone else. Ezra's phone pinged again. A photo from Julian. Him and Mateo, grinning in front of a mural in the Alberta Arts District. The caption read, "Thanks for making last night unforgettable." Ezra's chest tightened. He wanted to be happy for them. He should be. But every smile in that photo felt like a theft. He grabbed his jacket and headed to a local cafe, the Rusty Bean, where he and Julian used to spend hours debating art and politics. The cafe was a warm haven of exposed brick and mismatched furniture, the air thick with the scent of espresso. Ezra slid into a corner booth, hoping the familiarity would ground him. Instead, it sharpened his sense of loss. This was their place, but now Julian was probably sharing it with Mateo. "Ezra?" A voice snapped him out of his spiral. It was Lena, a 30-year-old non-binary barista with a buzz cut and a knack for reading people. They'd been friends since Ezra started coming here, bonding over shared cynicism and love for obscure jazz. "You look like you got hit by a truck," Lena said, sliding a latte across the table. "Spill." Ezra hesitated, then let it out, the party, the proposal, the way Julian's happiness felt like a mirror reflecting Ezra's failures. Lena listened, their eyes steady, no judgment. "Sounds like you're carrying a lot," they said finally. "But you can't keep throwing parties for someone else's life while ignoring your own." Ezra stared into his coffee, the foam swirling like his thoughts. Lena was right, but it didn't change the ache. He didn't just want Julian's life, he wanted Julian. And that truth was a wound he'd never dared touch. That evening, Ezra met Julian at a quiet park near Mount Tabor. The air was crisp, the sky streaked with pink and orange. Julian sat on a bench, sketchbook in hand, drawing the gnarled oak trees. He looked up as Ezra approached, his smile faltering. "You've been weird since the party," Julian said, closing his sketchbook. "What's going on?" Ezra's pulse raced. He'd rehearsed this moment 100 times, but now the words felt like glass in his mouth. "I threw you that party because I wanted to be part of your life," he started, voice low. "But standing there, watching you with Mateo, it felt like you took something from me." Julian's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" "Your life," Ezra said, the words spilling out. "The love, the home, the future we talked about in college. It was supposed to be mine. I was supposed to have that with you." The silence was deafening. Julian's eyes widened, his sketchbook slipping to the bench. "Ezra," he said softly, "I didn't know you felt that way." "Of course you didn't," Ezra snapped, his voice cracking. "You were too busy living my dream." Julian stood, his expression a mix of shock and pain. "Ezra, I love Mateo. I've always seen you as my brother. I didn't steal anything from you." Ezra turned away, his vision blurring. He wanted to scream, to run, to take it all back. But the words were out, and they hung between them like a storm cloud. The park's quiet was shattered by the weight of Ezra's confession. Julian stood frozen, his sketchbook forgotten on the bench, while Ezra paced, his breath uneven. The sunset painted the trees in fiery hues, but the warmth couldn't touch the chill between them. "Ezra, talk to me," Julian said, his voice steady but laced with worry. "You can't just say something like that and walk away." Ezra stopped, his hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets. He wanted to bolt, to escape the vulnerability clawing at him, but Julian's eyes, those damn earnest eyes, held him in place. "I don't know how to do this," Ezra admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been carrying this for years, Jules. Watching you with Mateo, seeing you so complete. It's like you got the life we planned together, and I'm stuck with nothing." Julian stepped closer, his expression softening. "We dreamed big, yeah, but those were our separate dreams. You wanted Broadway, I wanted a gallery. I didn't take anything from you, Easy. I'm just living my life." Ezra's laugh was bitter. "Your life? You've got a fiancé, a home, a community that loves you. I'm still scraping by, writing plays no one reads, sleeping with guys who don't stay past breakfast. You're living the life I was supposed to have with him." Julian flinched, but his voice stayed calm. "Mateo doesn't replace you. You're my best friend. I thought you were happy for me." "I tried," Ezra said, his throat tight. "I threw you that damn party to prove I could handle it. But I can't. Not when I—" He stopped, the words too raw to say aloud. "Not when I love you." Julian's face softened with realization. He reached out, but Ezra stepped back. "Ezra," Julian said, "I'm sorry if I made you feel left behind, but you can't blame me for finding happiness. You deserve that too." Ezra turned away, staring at the horizon. He wanted to believe Julian, but the ache in his chest screamed otherwise. "I need time," he muttered, walking away before Julian could respond. Back at his apartment, Ezra collapsed onto his couch, the silence suffocating. His phone buzzed, Mateo this time. Hey, Julian's worried about you. Wanna grab coffee tomorrow? Ezra tossed the phone aside. Mateo's kindness only made it worse. He wasn't the villain here, but Ezra couldn't help resenting him. The next day, Ezra avoided Mateo's offer and went back to the Rusty Bean. Lena was there, wiping down the counter. You look worse than yesterday, they said, tossing a rag over their shoulder. What happened? Ezra recounted the park conversation, his voice low to avoid eavesdroppers. Lena listened, their expression unreadable. You told him he stole your life? They said finally. That's heavy. I know, Ezra groaned, rubbing his temples. I didn't mean to say it like that. It just came out. Lena leaned forward, their voice firm. You're not mad at Julian. You're mad at yourself for not going after what you want. You're stuck, Ezra, and you're projecting it onto him. Ezra wanted to argue, but Lena's words hit too close. He'd been coasting on dreams for years, too scared to risk failure or rejection. Julian had taken those risks, and now he had Mateo, a home, a future. Ezra had what? A laptop full of half-finished scripts and a heart full of regrets. Go talk to him, Lena urged. Not to fight, but to be honest. You owe him that, and you owe yourself. That evening, Ezra found himself at Julian and Mateo's loft in the Pearl District. The space was warm, filled with Julian's vibrant paintings and Mateo's collection of vintage records. Julian opened the door, his expression guarded but hopeful. You came, he said. Yeah, Ezra said, shoving his hands in his pockets. Can we talk? Mateo excused himself, giving them space. Ezra sat on the couch, the weight of his words from the park still lingering. I'm sorry, he started. I didn't mean to make you feel like you did something wrong. It's just seeing you with Mateo. It's like looking at everything I've ever wanted and knowing I'll never have it. Julian sat beside him, his voice gentle. Ezra, you're not stuck. You're talented, you're brilliant. You just need to believe it. Ezra shook his head. It's not just about my career. It's you, Jules. I've been in love with you since we were 19. And now you're marrying someone else. The confession hung in the air, raw and unfiltered. Julian's eyes widened, a mix of shock and sorrow. Ezra, he said softly, I had no idea. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were my best friend, Ezra said, his voice breaking. I didn't want to lose you. And then Mateo came along, and I lost you anyway. Julian reached for his hand, but Ezra pulled away. You didn't lose me, Julian said. I'm still here, but I love Mateo. That's not going to change. Ezra nodded, tears burning his eyes. He'd known this deep down, but hearing it was a knife to the heart. I need to figure myself out, he said, standing. I can't keep living in your shadow. As he left, the city lights blurred through his tears. He felt untethered, but for the first time he saw a flicker of clarity. This wasn't about Julian stealing his life. It was about Ezra not claiming his own. Ezra spent the next week avoiding Julian's calls. The loft conversation had ripped open a wound he'd spent years ignoring, and he wasn't ready to face it or Julian again. Portland's gray skies mirrored his mood as he wandered the city, trying to outrun his thoughts. He ended up at Powell's Books, the sprawling bookstore that had always been his refuge. Among the towering shelves, he could disappear, even from himself. He pulled a worn copy of Giovanni's Room from a shelf, its pages dog-eared from countless readers. The story of love, shame, and identity hit too close, but Ezra read anyway, letting Baldwin's words carve into him. He wasn't David, torn between worlds, but he felt the same suffocating fear of wanting what he couldn't have. By the time he left, the book tucked under his arm, he knew he couldn't keep running. Back at the Rusty Bean, Lena noticed the shift in him. "You're thinking," they said, sliding a fresh latte his way. "That's dangerous." Ezra managed a half-smile. "I'm done blaming Julian, but I don't know how to move forward. I've been stuck for so long. I don't even know what I want anymore." Lena leaned on the counter, their voice low. "Start small. Write something true. Not for Broadway. Not for anyone else. Just for you." That night, Ezra opened his laptop and started typing. Not his play, but a letter to himself, raw and unfiltered. He wrote about the boy who dreamed of love and success, the man who'd let fear hold him back. The words poured out, messy but honest, until dawn broke. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of purpose. Julian, meanwhile, was grappling with Ezra's confession. He sat in his studio, a sunlit room filled with half-finished canvases, staring at a blank one. Mateo found him there, his dark eyes soft with concern. "You've been quiet all week," Mateo said, sitting beside him. "Is it Ezra?" Julian nodded, running a hand through his hair. "I feel like I broke him, Mateo. He's been in love with me all this time, and I didn't see it." Mateo took his hand, his touch grounding. "You didn't break him. He's hurting, but that's not your fault. You can't control how he feels." "I know," Julian said, his voice heavy, "but he's my best friend. I can't just let him go." Mateo squeezed his hand. "Then don't, but give him space. He needs to find his own way." Julian started painting, his brushstrokes bold and chaotic, a reflection of his guilt and love for Ezra. The canvas became a storm of colors, blues for their late-night talks, golds for their shared dreams, reds for the pain they were both carrying. When he finished, it wasn't a masterpiece, but it was honest. He titled it Brother. Ezra's breakthrough came unexpectedly. He submitted a short story to a local literary magazine, a piece inspired by his letter to himself. It was about two friends navigating love and loss, set against Portland's rainy streets. To his shock, the editor called a week later. They wanted to publish it. The validation was small but electric, a reminder that his voice mattered. Emboldened, Ezra reached out to Julian, suggesting they meet at their old college haunt, a dive bar called the Starlight Lounge. The bar was dim, with neon signs casting a warm glow over chipped wooden tables. Julian arrived, his sketchbook tucked under his arm, a hesitant smile on his face. "I read your story," Julian said, sliding into the booth. "It's incredible, Easy. It's you." Ezra's cheeks warmed. "Thanks. It's a start." They ordered beers, the tension easing as they fell into old rhythms, talking about art, life, the city. But the air was still heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Ezra took a breath. "I'm sorry for what I said at the park. You didn't steal anything from me. I was just lost." Julian's eyes softened. "I'm sorry too. I should have noticed you were struggling. You're not just my best friend, Izzy. You're family." The word family hit Ezra hard, but not in the way it used to. It wasn't a consolation prize. It was a truth he'd overlooked. "I'm trying to find my own path," Ezra said, "but I don't want to lose you in the process." "You won't," Julian promised. "We're in this together." They clinked their bottles, the sound a small anchor in the storm. Ezra felt lighter, not because the pain was gone, but because he was starting to see a way through it. The weeks that followed were a slow unraveling of Ezra's old patterns. He wrote every day, not for acclaim but for clarity, filling notebooks with stories and fragments of plays. The literary magazine's publication of his story had sparked something, a belief that he could rebuild. But the ache for Julian lingered, a quiet hum beneath his progress. One rainy afternoon, Ezra met Mateo at a community center in North Portland, where Mateo was organizing a youth art workshop. The space was alive with color, kids painting murals on the walls. Mateo greeted him with a warm hug, his energy disarming. "Glad you came," he said. "Julian said you're writing again. That's huge." Ezra nodded, watching a teenager paint a vibrant sun. It's not easy, but it's something. Mateo's gaze was steady. "You know, Julian talks about you all the time. He's proud of you, even when you don't see it." The words caught Ezra off guard. He'd always seen Mateo as the barrier between him and Julian, but here he was, building a bridge. "I've been kind of a mess," Ezra admitted. "I didn't make it easy for him, or you." Mateo smiled, unperturbed. "Love's messy. Friendship's messier. But you two have something real. Don't let it go." Ezra spent the afternoon helping the kids, their laughter easing the weight in his chest. He saw Mateo's passion, his commitment to community, and understood why Julian loved him. It wasn't about stealing Ezra's life, it was about building something new. Julian, meanwhile, was planning the wedding with Mateo, but Ezra's absence at their planning sessions was a quiet ache. One evening he called Lena, needing an outside perspective. They met at a quiet jazz club, the music low and soulful. Lena sipped their whiskey, listening as Julian poured out his fears. "I don't want to lose him," Julian said, his voice tight, "but I don't know how to fix this without hurting Mateo." Lena swirled their glass, thoughtful. "You're not choosing between them. Ezra's not asking you to. He's trying to find himself, and you need to let him. Be his friend, not his savior." Julian nodded, the advice sinking in. He'd spent so long trying to hold their friendship together, he hadn't realized Ezra needed space to grow. The next day, he left a voicemail for Ezra. "I'm here when you're ready. No pressure. Just know I love you, man." Ezra listened to the voicemail on a bus ride across the city, the words warming him despite the rain streaking the windows. He was starting to see Julian not as a lost love, but as a constant, a brother, like he'd said. The shift was painful but freeing. He threw himself into a new play, one about a man rediscovering his voice after years of silence. The words flowed, raw and honest, drawing from his own journey. He workshopped it with a local theater group, their feedback sharpening his craft. For the first time, he felt like he was building something of his own. One evening, Julian invited him to dinner at the Loft. Ezra hesitated but went, nervous about facing them as a couple. The night was warm, the table set with Mateo's homemade empanadas and Julian's favorite red wine. They laughed, shared stories, and for a moment it felt like college again. Just the three of them, no shadows. After dinner, Mateo pulled Ezra aside. "We want you at the wedding," he said. "Not just as a guest, but as Julian's best man. If you're up for it." Ezra's throat tightened. The offer was a lifeline, a chance to redefine his place in Julian's life. "I'd be honored," he said, his voice steady. As the wedding approached, Ezra worked on his best man speech, pouring his heart into every word. He wrote about friendship, about love that endures through change, about the courage to let go and hold on at the same time. It wasn't perfect, but it was true. The night before the wedding, Ezra met Julian at the rooftop venue where he'd thrown the engagement party. The city sparkled below, the air thick with the scent of summer blooms. "I'm proud of you," Julian said, his eyes bright. You're finding your way. Ezra smiled, the weight of years lifting. So are you. I'm sorry I made it harder than it needed to be. They hugged, the embrace fierce and grounding. For the first time, Ezra felt like he was standing in his own light. The wedding day dawned bright, Portland's skyline shimmering under a rare cloudless sky. The venue, a garden tucked behind a historic mansion, was alive with color, wildflowers in mason jars, string lights weaving through ancient oaks. Ezra stood at the edge of the crowd, his suit crisp, his best man's speech folded in his pocket. He watched Julian and Mateo, both radiant in tailored suits, exchange vows with a quiet intensity that silenced the world around them. The moment was theirs, but Ezra no longer felt like an outsider. He felt like family. During the reception, Ezra took the microphone, his hands steady despite the flutter in his chest. The crowd hushed, their faces lit by candlelight. Julian and I met when we were 18, he began, his voice clear. Two kids with big dreams and bigger fears. He taught me that love isn't just about romance. It's about showing up, even when it's hard, even when you're scared. Julian and Mateo, you remind us that love is a choice, every day to build something real. I'm honored to stand here, not just as your friend, but as someone who's learned to find his own way because of you. The crowd cheered, Julian's eyes glistening as he pulled Ezra into a hug. Mateo joined them, his grin wide. That was beautiful, man, he said. You're stuck with us now. Ezra laughed, the sound freer than it had been in years. He danced with Lena, who'd shown up in a sharp blazer, and with Julian's cousins, who pulled him into a chaotic group photo. The night was a blur of joy, music, and connection. A reminder that life wasn't about competing for happiness, but sharing it. In the months that followed, Ezra's life began to take shape. His play was picked up by a small theater company, with a debut scheduled for the spring. He started dating again, not chasing fleeting thrills but seeking something real. He and Julian settled into a new rhythm, weekly coffee dates, late-night texts about art and life. Mateo became a friend in his own right, their bond forged through shared love for Julian and a mutual respect. One evening, Ezra sat at the Rusty Bean, Lena across from him, both sipping chai. You look different, Lena said, their eyes sharp. Lighter. Ezra smiled, glancing at the notebook where he'd jotted ideas for a new story. I'm starting to believe I can have my own life, not someone else's. Lena raised their mug. To stealing your own life back. Ezra clinked his mug against theirs, the sound a quiet victory. He wasn't there yet, but he was moving forward, one word, one step, one truth at a time. The story of Ezra, Julian, and Mateo wasn't about who won or lost. It was about the courage to face yourself, to love without possession, to build a life from the ashes of what might have been. Ezra had thrown Julian an engagement party, hoping to hold onto a dream. Instead, he'd found something better, the strength to create his own.